Welcome back to Lit versus Genre, everybody, and we are parrying. We are
Sure.
hardcore parrying. Parent chapters come in pairs now, I guess, is what
Yeah, man.
happens. So how you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. It's funny now that I'm reading, the way we are, I'm not reading quite as much. I find myself sometimes when I'm reading thinking about what the conversation is going to be like in some chapters.
That's
And then in
interesting.
other chapters, I get swept up, right? Like it pulls
Ah,
me back in,
okay.
right? So, because in some I'm like, oh, Steve's going to talk about how this is, this way or that way. And then I'm like, yeah, I know I could see how it could be looked at this way. And I can also then, but then there's other parts where I'm just like in and I'm like, that chapter's ended. I didn't even know. So I think that's going to be fun to talk about too, like which ones pull you in versus which ones could be harder because just as another quick thing, my wife and I finally started listening to, and obviously Richard Sky and I started
Uh-huh.
listening to the very first book being the prequel called The New Spring.
What? Wait, wait,
And
wait, wait, wait. There's a prequel to all this?
there's a prequel to all this.
I
There's a
didn't know
prequel.
that. By Robert
Yeah,
Jordan?
by Robert Jordan. It's A New
Wait,
Spring.
before
Uh,
so before he finished, he wrote a
mhm.
prequel
Yeah, I need to check to see when. Yes, so obviously yes,
because
because
he
he didn't get
didn't
to finish the
finish.
series. Right? Yeah, no, he did not finish, so I knew that. I was more going to look up like
Imagine how
when
pissed
this
people
book
would
came out.
be. How pissed people would
Right.
be at Jar Jar Martin if he was like, "Hey, guess what, guys? I'm gonna make a
Right.
prequel."
Yeah. So this came out in January 2004. The
Okay.
prequel came out, and then I would obviously need to look up the timeline of when the other books came out. But the point here is that I wanted to read it. My wife and I wanted to read it because, as you're saying, it's kind of rumored that maybe some of that will be in the first season, right?
Ah.
Yeah, so he wrote it between, oh, wow, it really was one of the last ones that he did because he did
Hmm.
Crossroads of Twilight, which was book 10
Mm-hmm.
um, in January 2003. Then he released this one, and then he wrote his last book, Knife of Dreams, which was the return to form a lot of us talk about. I
Hmm.
wonder if this new spring helped him return to form. That's fascinating.
Hmm.
Anyway, and so you get Knife of Dreams was his last one, and then you get the last three, which was like him and Brandon. But anyway, the point was that I just want to make here is that I found it really fascinating about obviously the things we've been talking about this book being tough for people because like
Hmm.
my wife Sky has been trying to get like her friends to read it and stuff, and some of them are bouncing off of it. They're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this
Hmm.
book, right? Because and I feel it in chapters like Eyes Without Pity, where it
Hmm.
feels like this stretch, right, of time. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but reading it and comparing it to like TV these days or something like that, like
Hmm.
almost nothing is happening, right? Like
Right.
in this first chapter, Eyes Without Pity. That's why I'm having this like whole conversation.
It's a
And what I
lot of
found was
crows,
it's a
man.
lot of crows. It's a lot of crows. And it's like, okay, maybe they get caught and pecked to death. Probably not.
Right.
So what am I waiting for, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
get past the crows, right? So I read a chapter and like this, and I'm like, yeah, I see why people who bounce off, who don't maybe care about the characters, don't care about the word. It's not enough action, right?
Hmm.
Compared to New Spring, I'm now really wondering if New Spring is the better entry point for new
Interesting.
people because it follows, at least so far, just Lan and Moraine. And
Oh,
that's
that
that's
is
it, right?
fascinating.
And so
Wait,
you
Jeff,
actually get to see them. Go do it. Go
had
ahead.
you never read that before?
I've never read it.
Oh.
For some reason I saved it. I
Uh-huh.
think because I don't know. I think maybe I wanted something left, to read. Sky
Sure.
does this a lot. She'll not finish reading a series because she
Right.
doesn't want it to end. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And I think maybe by me keeping it, I was doing some of that subconsciously. But then there was just this perfect time to read it for the first time with her after she now finished the whole series. And so we're getting to appreciate together, and it's amazing. But as we're reading it, we're both like, oh my goodness, is this the book people should be reading? Because it feels so much more accessible.
That's
Um,
interesting. Let us know down
yeah,
below in the
I
comments,
will.
y'all.
Well, yeah, yeah. Let us know, people, what you think. But obviously, I'm totally skewed because I know the whole story.
Right.
So I have all these other thoughts about Lan and Moraine, right? But I do still think it would be an easier story to follow for people because it's drawn out because it's Robert Jordan, but it's much more immediate in terms of like kind of what's happening in the conflict.
Interesting.
I don't think I'd be giving too big spoilers to say it starts with like Lan basically fighting in a war, and then Moraine in magic school in Tar Valon. And so, and I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to spoil like at what point in their ages there are or anything like that or their relationship. But those are two very interesting situations to be at the magic school of Tar Valon with Aes Sedai and then be at war with the Great Warrior. Let's read about that.
I think it's fair to say they might have a good bit of flashback to that, but you've already seen the casting announcements of Rand, Egwene's parents, so it like can't be primarily at the beginning of that, or at least I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so. I'm thinking they may do some flashbacks. I didn't know how much of a prequel it was. I didn't know if it was, days before they got there to the Two Rivers, or if it was years before they got there. And so again, I don't want to. I mean, I think with a fan story, I imagine people have probably read this already. That I'm an outlier in having saved it. But I will say I wasn't sure, and so I will say that it is set a fair bit before. So yeah, they would probably just need to be flashbacks. It's not something they could seamlessly go from one to the next. But I'm curious how much it will get integrated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah, so basically, I'm bringing this up to say I do wonder now if that was almost was this done as an alternate entry point? Was this done for Jordan just to be able to write something, dare I say, simpler, with only a couple characters after the million characters he's having to juggle by the time we finish writing book 10? And so it's just really it's been just a fascinating experience overall. And again, that leads me to Eyes Without Pity. How'd you make it through this chapter? Talk to me. Be honest.
Yeah, actually, I don't remember like being too like bad. Okay. It did feel kind of repetitive with them trying to escape these crows. I guess like my bigger issue when I was reading this was like, where were these crows before? Like this seems you would think this would be like kind of his like main information system, dark ones, but they only just kind of show up now, and I think it was because we just needed a new threat, but it doesn't feel very consistent. Why send like Man-Bat after them when you could just have like 100 zillion crows kind of be flying after them? But
yep.
So yeah, that was my one main thing about this. Other than that, I mean, tension-wise, I guess it was like, all right, I did feel reasonably scared for them. But yeah.
I was just thinking as we talk about we were talking before about, writing classes and stuff like that and plot structures. I feel like if this was a scene in a movie, people would be like, no. Like, just no. It's 2 minutes. It's like a minute.
No, yeah, it'd be very short. It'd be like one little beat. Right.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I like the tension. I like Elias, kind of not knowing but being tense, and not knowing what he's waiting for, and sort of us kind of wrapping that thing up from before. But I would agree. It definitely did felt like, hey, what? This seems very useful to be using all the time, and not just out here on these plains, right? I mean, I do think one thing we could say is that Baalzamon did just find him in the dream because the wolves had been protecting him. And so now he sent the crows out to that area. Okay. And again, maybe they knew already that the boys were in the Two Rivers, and so crows can't bring him back, right? So it would make sense for them to send like Trollocs and stuff that actually could, again, would a sneakier force of dark friends kidnapping maybe make even more sense than a huge band of Trollocs, maybe. But at any rate, I do think that could be a potential explanation for this. But I will say that to me, the steading felt set up because we end in the steading in the chapter, right? And the steading has been kind of mentioned.
Where again, was that mentioned?
I was just going to say, yeah, I was actually waiting for this. I was going to say, Yeah, it wasn't mentioned as like ogre steadings had been talked about.
Ogre
But
steadings. Okay.
if you weren't reading for that, are you going to remember? Right? It's like, because I know it, I saw it when we were reading earlier chapters. And it was like, oh, cool. Like there it is. So it was, but it wasn't set up in this way. It wasn't talked about as, oh, this is a place where the one power doesn't work. This is a place like where the dark ones won't go, stuff like that, right? We get more of that explanation now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, can we hold on to that? Because I want to talk
yeah,
about
please.
that some more. That was definitely one of my
Yeah.
like big issues with this. Was I was like,
Mm-hmm,
this feels
mm-hmm.
very Deus Ex Machina to
Oh,
me.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if we did hear about him before, again, like I mean, that's one of the, I guess, just one of the perennial challenges of fantasy is how to like
Yeah,
kind of flag post this stuff, so I don't feel like this is just some random like, oh, we crossed the
right.
line and we're good. And I was like, wait, what? That is like that is super unfulfilling way to resolve this.
Yeah,
Um,
when you say that, yeah,
but
no,
I want
go
to
ahead.
talk about a couple other things.
Please, go for it.
Here does Elias, and I guess this is supposed to be funny, maybe that like
Yeah,
Elias is telling her to be quiet and he's shouting.
right,
Okay, I
right.
like kind of get that joke, but I think it could have something about the phrasing. I don't know. It didn't make me lol. It made me go like, what the hell? Because I guess like I don't take Elias. I
You don't
think
think Elias would
Elias
make
would
a
be smarter
mistake,
than that. Yeah, like he would
right?
be super cagey and like on top of it and not freaking out to the extent that he's contradicting himself right here. So that didn't
Mm,
really hit for me. Again, I kind
it
of
probably
see
didn't
what,
quite ring true.
yeah, like
Yeah,
I get the joke, but like it didn't hit for that reason
I
because I don't think that's Elias. I don't think of Elias that way, I guess.
I guess it's tough, right? Because it's that thing again of, do we take it to mean that he is really freaked out by what just happened? Um, and again, I mean, there's a lot of upsides to multiple POV, but I do think there are downsides. You lose some of the momentum, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, if we just saw Elias really tense in the last chapter, and then we see that kind of bleeding out with him growling the way he does here, again, I feel that could be more of a through line. Whereas from a distance, then it's like, well, are we getting reminded of that, or does it just feel unrealistic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is my last one for this kind of beginning of this part. But
Mm-hmm.
this one I'm gonna hit on because I feel like it's happening constantly with a lot of characters. Even in this thought process,
Okay.
I think I'm like, dude, you do not wish. It would be wonderful if they went away, if they just vanished. But right now, I'm sure glad they're here. I'm having like a really hard time, and he's constantly having these monologues or these soliloquies throughout the chapter where he's like, I
Right.
hate this wolf power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard for me to accept it at face value that you like hate this wolf power when like everything, only good things have coming from this wolf power, like only things that have helped you are coming from this wolf power. I like if I woke up and I was communing with wolves, maybe that's it. Like maybe in my fantasy I want people
Right.
to be into the thing
Right.
that's
Right.
amazingly magical about them. And I
Right.
don't want them to be just reflexively. Maybe that is more true. I don't know, but it doesn't feel like very fulfilling to me. And also, when like
Mm-hmm.
all the evidence, like every time this happens, all the evidence is pointing in the opposite direction to the point where I cannot like feel it. I'm like, man, I hate this wolf power, but man, it sure is handy for helping me avoid crazy crows. Like, no, it's obviously a good thing. Everything about it has been good. Just look around. Like, obviously, dude, it just makes me have a really hard time relating with this self-hatred that like all the characters have, that like Nynaeve
Yeah.
has, that
Mm-hmm.
Perrin
Mm-hmm.
has,
Yep.
Egg, who I'm not allowed to be in her thoughts, is the only one that's like, yeah, let's go. Wizard, yeah,
Right. Right.
being a wizard would be awesome. What are you people talking about? It would
That's right. Egg is
rule.
amazing. That's Egg's great.
But I'm not allowed to be in her head. She doesn't
Nope.
get a POV.
Nope. So I do wonder, because this is obviously inspired a lot, and I'm really glad you brought it up because it is 100% a theme in this novel. It is very much the reluctant hero from all angles, right? Like, is there something that makes me different? I do not want it, right? Whether it's Rand's obviously makes the most sense to not want because that power is
There's
gonna
nothing
drive me
good
insane.
about his. He hasn't even gotten any magic. He hasn't been able to like do any magical things.
Exactly, right. But we do already get someone who doesn't want the potential power that they've got, right? Then you've got, Matt speaking in tongues or whatever, right? And he's like, no, let's not talk about that. Then you've got, just you said, Nynaeve learning that she can be an Aes Sedai. She's like, F that. Then you've got him getting wolf powers. He's like, I don't want to be a wolf person. This is bad, right? So we are definitely getting people not wanting this stuff, right? And I do hear you that generally the reason I read, fantasy stories and stuff, well, there's many reasons, but one of them is just as you said, sort of when someone gets power, it's awesome. It's like, you got this power, it's cool. Let's get excited about it. And I do feel like that is a partial difference between trends that happen in fantasy versus like comics, right? Because in comics, superpowers, right? Right, like people get a superpower, and it's like, this is amazing. I mean, and sure, we've got the with great power comes great responsibility. So there's responsibility attached to it, sure, but otherwise, it's awesome, right? Whereas in a lot of
so you're bringing up Spider-Man. You're bringing up Spider-Man. So here we go.
Do it.
That sells me because at first he loves his powers. That's the whole point of the origin. That sells me on like what sucks about him. Like I feel it. Like especially Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi, which I've talked your ear off about, is like the height of Spider-Man stuff besides like the original.
We gotta watch him do a recording on it.
Yeah, I mean that movie, you feel it when he like throws his costume in the trash, which was based on a very famous issue of the original series. Why? Like there is nothing in my mind going, nah, that I wouldn't do that. Like, why are you protesting so much? Like, I feel it. So I feel like in this, like, I get that. That's like a cool turn to be like, oh, everybody gets this magic stuff and it all sucks. But it has to literally suck. Like, you have to show me what sucks about it. You can't just be like, oh, I'm a provincial farm boy and so I'm scared of it. Or I hate Aes Sedai strangers, so I'm scared. Like, that's not enough. Like, I want to see something that, like, is legitimately awful.
Well, I totally. Let's get into that in just a little bit, because I do think we should just kind of wrap up the theme real fast. Which is, so I do think that that's pretty common, that in comics it's like, hey, we've got this power, because a lot of powers in comics are individualized. That like, I have this power, like I got bit by a spider, so I'm different. You know what I mean? Obviously there are exceptions, right? But mainly it's just one person. With magic, it's usually more universal. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely instances where people have powers that are more specific, like this wolf power that we're seeing that seems pretty localized just to Elias and Perrin, right? But with Aes Sedai, that's, sure, there's some limits on it, but basically anyone that can channel could do it. Yada, yada. Anyway, my point is that a lot of fantasy cuts the fantasy, which seems weird. But the more I read, the more I think it's because, and the more I write, it's because writing a world that's full of magic is hard. It takes a lot of work to be like, let's make everything magic, right? And so many books, magic is outlawed, or very few people can do them, or the people that could do it were killed, you know what I mean? Or there's a small sect of people and someone got away. Like, I was just reading a couple books at Barnes & Noble. I was like, oh, all these covers look great. And this happened where it was like there was barely any magic, or the magic was suppressed. I'm like, I want to read for magic. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, where is the magic? But also in my writing, it happens too, where I'm like, there should be more magic. And so, and that's what I feel about Game of Thrones. Like, there's very limited magic, right? It's like barely fantasy in my eyes. But so right now, and again, we keep talking about like later books, but this blows up. Like it becomes very magic heavy. Like right now, we've got all these people resisting their powers, right? But then we get into a place of acceptance, and it's awesome eventually. Not, I'm not saying everyone accepts. Obviously, there's going to be varied reactions from people.
Right.
But I do think it's a fascinating trend in fantasy, and I think it's one of the reasons that Harry Potter really blew up, because her stuff is super immersive with the magic. She's got magic everywhere. She's got magic in the candy that they eat on the trains. She's got pictures that talk to you like everywhere. There's a little flavor of magic, right? And she's brilliant in that regard. And very few, I've read a decent amount of fantasy, and very few fantasy
really
has that amount.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I mean, not being, well versed at all in the genre, like, I kind of get, hearing from what you're saying, like, I get this instinct to kind of keep it special in a way, like to kind of limit it, to keep it special. There's also like problems that of power level I felt in like some recent, genre movies and stuff. Like, I think like The Matrix was basically over after he became a god. Like, there's just nothing that you can do at that point. Like, and I thought the ending of the first Matrix was perfect. It's like, okay, he's a god. End series. Like, that's the end.
It's amazing.
It feels like one of those endings where like it's hinting a sequel almost as a joke, and there wasn't supposed to be a sequel, right?
Oh,
like,
I would completely agree. 100%.
Like Back to the Future original one, like that was just a joke. There wasn't supposed to be sequels. I mean, I love the sequels to that movie, but
I'm glad there are.
I'm glad there are, but I don't think there was supposed to. And I think even Zemeckis is on record saying like they were like, yeah, we had no plans to do a sequel to this. It was like a joke.
I thought they said that for Matrix too, that they only made the sequel because it like made so much money. I mean, I could be wrong, but I swore that's what happened.
Yeah, like you would not write yourself into that position. and Zemeckis talks about this a lot, that they like wrote themselves into a terrible position with the end of that first Back to the Future movie.
Yeah, so I thought that might be interesting. It's something that I've only more recently realized that a lot of fantasy books don't actually have a lot of fantasy. Don't have a lot of magic.
Well, I guess
but it's limited.
My point was like, if you have magic, like you could make a character too strong, I guess. Like, do you think is that like part of the danger of doing that? Do you feel like it ever gets to that point in this series where any of these characters just get too powerful that it takes the stakes away?
No, it's just awesome. It's just, I know, because it's set up that you've got the Forsaken, right? Who are this whole other. It's like, it's literally, you're watching this amazing. This is like a comic series, and that, you've got the good guy team and you got the bad guy team, basically. And the bad guy team they're stacked. They're great. And that's not even the only team that's playing. So, you get a lot of really powerful people, but it doesn't feel like it goes too far because there's...
You said at some point we start getting like POV of bad guy team, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you do.
That definitely seems like would elevate a lot of this.
Dude, it's awesome. It's so sick. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, and that's what makes it, like, to me is that's where you're leveraging the multiple POVs, because then you're seeing what the bad guys' plans are, you're seeing what the good guys' plans are, you're seeing what his side group's plans are. Like, you get everybody, you get all the factions. You're getting to see their perspectives, and it's amazing. So to get back to this, I do think there are also stories. There's a whole group of novels called Xantia novels, or Xantia. I never know if I'm saying that right. I should look it up. It's the Xanxia, Xantia. Okay. And that's a lot about cultivation and reaching like God status to reach the heavens. And so then you get these like godlike characters that are fighting against each other. I almost think of it kind of like, what's that great movie? Highlander, right? Like they're kind of like gods fighting each other, basically. So I think as long as you've got competing gods, you're okay, right? The problem is when one character just becomes too overpowered, and then it feels like you're stretching to make them more powerful, kind of thing, which I think like maybe DBZ runs into a bit. But anyway, to get back to this one, with this. I'm trying to even think like where did this come from? Oh, right, it came from him not wanting the power. I feel you. If I could talk to wolves, I mean, yeah, like it would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think what he was going for was a cultural thing, in that again the people who were different, the Aes Sedai, broke the world, and that was terrible. So we've got the female Aes Sedai who nobody trusts, right? But again, I'm with you. Like if we could have gotten some more concrete things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if we, if someone from the town had been discovered to be that and taken away by Aes Sedai, or
Yeah.
obviously they're too small. The point isn't no one's visited them, but like if that happened a town over, you know what I'm saying? And so they felt the kind of small aftershock of it.
Yeah.
Or if, someone had been different and that was a problem because of the white cloaks, as we see in the next chapter, right? To a degree. So, I mean, the systems are there, but I agree that they aren't given to us as fully. Right now, it's just like, I just don't want to be different. I want to go back home,
Right.
which, as you say, could be realistic, but as you and I have talked about, realistic doesn't necessarily mean interesting. I would enjoy Perrin more in these chapters if he was in love with it.
Right. So that's one way you
Yeah.
could be in love with it, or give me like more reasons besides this vague cultural thing that's more kind of like an idea, whereas I want to see something in the narrative that's being like, this is awful. Like if the wolves are like harassing him, or if they're like mean to him, or like, I don't know.
Great.
Yeah, right now they seem great. I mean, they don't. I mean, I'm a little confused about the wolves too, and obviously we'll talk about this. I think in the next chapter.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, this is kind of hark back to something I said about the traveling people chapter in that big wolf paragraph, where I was like, I'd like there to be more relationship there between him and the wolves, and maybe use that to sell me on this is kind of the pits, because the wolves are always kind of like harassing him or being like, oh, you're no good, you're a smelly human, or something, but I don't feel him hating this power right now. And like, again, we just get more of it. Egg makes like what I thought was a pretty like big inference at that moment based on what he said, and I'm like, okay, I figured it out, that's fine. I wasn't like 100% sure. I'd be like, what? Oh, really? You got it from that? But okay.
It is Zeg we're talking about. She's amazing.
Her powers of deduction are quite strong. Okay, so then we get to the steading. Here's my thing with the steading. Yeah, it felt very like get out of jail free sort of thing. Even if it was mentioned earlier, like I feel like it still would feel like a get out of jail free.
Because there just happens to be one here.
It just happens to be one here. It does exactly what you need at that moment. Yep. And then also, but my other bigger thing is like, they ask about this. He tells them this story. He's like, have you not heard about this before? And then he tells them a story, which sounds like, yeah, they should have heard about it, because like they're always talking about stories, and this seemed like a pretty major story. But then what this story doesn't do is tell me why this place works like this. Like I'm like, okay, here's the history of this place. That's cool.
You learn about the eye, bro.
Yeah, we have story time. We have story time about the king guy and how he was gonna set up this monument to himself and all this. But that's fine story time, and I guess I'm getting more used to that. Like, oh, we're gonna have story time every once in a while in a chapter. But that didn't answer the key question that I had, which is why the heck would this be a place that dark powers, Aes Sedai, one power cannot go into? I don't know. And I just feel like it's odd that they don't ask that, which would be the key question to me. I'd be like, who cares about this dumbass who built a statue? I want to know, like, why are we safe here?
Yeah, are we legit safe?
Right.
I appreciate that Perrin asks, should we just wait out the war here? Can we just chill in this magic spot? And then the exact problem that Elias talks about happens. But yeah, no, I do hear that. I do that. It's like, why isn't that being poked at more? For sure, because there is an answer to a degree. But yeah, it is funny that's not being talked about here. I do think, it's a big world, and at least I know from my experience, I feel like, because the world's got a lot But I definitely feel like Jordan finding his way in it, like, cause
Mm-hmm.
he's written other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But this is the first book into a really big world. So I
Right.
do wonder, as we talked about before, how many of these things did he know? How many of these things is he coming up with as he's writing?
Right.
Since he is more of a points on a map writer, he's not a huge plotter. And even, as we've joked about, right? If you spend all your time world building, you're never going to write a novel,
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of world building does naturally happen as you're writing. So he may not know right now, right? He's like, yeah, studies. This is what they are. They're just safe spots. Um, but yeah, no, I do feel you that, having a little bit more of that answer now would seem appropriate for sure. And also, I think this is the danger of a long book. Even if we did get Steading mentioned 20 times, we're also over 400 pages into this book, right? If those Steading mentions weren't recent, and especially if Steadings weren't ever said to be safe spots,
Mm-hmm.
I feel you that it can feel like, oh, it's a Steading, which I've heard about. Oh, and it's safe? Well, that's nice.
Right.
For sure, for sure. Yep.
I mean, I wonder even if like Elias is being cagey about where they're going to escape
Mm,
these, but he knows exactly that it's the steading. And if
yep.
he had just said that originally, look, I know this place where one power can't
Right.
penetrate. Let's get there. And then they're like, cool, yeah. Would I have
I'm,
been like a little bit less? That's a Deus Ex Machina that we
mm,
just stepped over the line and we're good. You
right,
know?
right. Well, and here's the thing. I do notice that this story does rely a lot more on the mystery side of things.
Yeah.
A lot more on lots of little tiny mysteries. Like, where are we going? Who knows? Right? Like,
Yeah.
well, let's find out. And then what do we do? Because even the way Elias's answer is written, it's written like he's waiting. It's written like he's waiting to tell them, and he's like excited to tell them, excited that they got there, which he did seem stressed, cool, right? But it does sort of perpetuate the notion of like old people aren't going to answer questions until
Right.
they are good and ready, kind of thing. Um,
For
so
no
yeah,
reason. And
you,
like,
you know,
and maybe y'all can read this and you're like, well, I'm sure I'll learn about why a steading is like this
mm,
someday. But like, I'm not like that. I don't want. I don't want to be
right,
like, oh yeah,
right,
I trust it'll come down the
right,
road. Let's talk about Arthur for like
right.
5 paragraphs, and I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah.
What?
Well, I think this is classic. I mean, it's funny. We were talking about that before about kind of little story maps. And if we were mapping this, like, I think we would see it as this thing just appears, right? And I
Yeah.
was literally just thinking about Deus Ex Machinas just the other day and like what they are in comparison to story map. It's just, it's a solution that hasn't been foreshadowed, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's very basic. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it is. But the idea is that here, yeah, if we're not getting sufficient foreshadowing and we get a solution to a problem that is a big deal, how much is that helping us? This is Brandon talks about this, that if you want to use magic as a solution, that's when magic starts to need more rules,
Mm.
because if magic can just do anything, then it can solve anything,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't necessarily feel satisfying,
Yeah.
right? um, so it feels like you either need an explanation of how the magic works. Well, I shouldn't say it feels like. You need an explanation of how the magic works ahead of time. And then when it works, where a character is manipulated in a way that it can work like a solution, then yeah, it happened. Or in my perspective, it seems like it works also if you got sacrifice, right? If you've got like the
Mm.
you shall not pass part of, Lord of the Rings, and then
Mm.
Gandalf is gone, right?
Mm.
Well, sure, the magic worked, but there was a huge cost you had to pay
Mm.
for it. So, you paid for that solution. So, it feels like there does need to be something here where it's just something we didn't know, the characters didn't know,
Mm.
it's revealed, it works, and then no questions about it, right?
Right.
If we just talk about this on paper, that if I was writing a story and I presented it to my writing group, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, they'd be like, don't do that. Right?
Mm.
Like that would not be satisfying. Right? So I do feel you on it. And it's fascinating to go back and see this. And yeah, I do wonder about like, was the prequel written to be an alternate entry point? Obviously, the other chapter that was written was meant to be an alternate entry point. And that is something that's tough when you write a really big series and you're not perhaps I think obviously Robert Jordan is a very strong writer, at least for my
Right.
writing taste. But I would definitely say his stories improve
Right.
as the chapters go,
Sure.
as the stories go on, right?
And you would
As
expect
the
that.
books.
He wrote it, over
Exactly.
decades. He's going to get
Right.
better. Right.
Exactly. So, but it's tricky, right? Because then you've got this big series that has a bumpier entry point
Mm-hmm.
than later books,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so, and it does feel like that's how do you get over that, right? Is there a way to fix that? And I do wonder how much some of that stuff has been done as attempts to fix it. So, anyway,
That's
it's just a
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, I wonder if
Yeah,
there are other examples of that where, yeah, like I mean, I would think it would be pretty common. It feels pretty common in television shows where like the
yeah,
first season
for
is
sure.
kind of janky, and then it gets
Hmm.
good. But yeah.
I was straight up thinking of that. It was Schitt's Creek. For
Mm.
instance, Sky Loves. She just skipped the first season. She like the first season was too
Mm.
awkward, too much. But she started
Interesting.
season 2 and she loved it.
Yeah,
Loved
my
it.
wife and I bounced off that show the first episode.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, it's
Yep.
like, I mean, it was kind of amusing, but like, I just was
Right.
not into it. And
Same here. I bounced right off of it too.
that's interesting.
But so yeah, she just skipped the first season and then it was amazing for her. So yeah, no, it does because it's similar, right? Where you get these very long TV shows and it takes a while for the characters and the writers to find their groove with who the characters are and their relationships. And then same for these huge fantasy series, right?
So what about this? This is a spoiler
Ooh,
symbol.
totally a spoiler
I
symbol.
was like, what's that? What's that? That's the light people, children of the light people. So then, and here I do. This is weird because I'm anti-reveal, but
Ooh,
here I was like, well,
ooh,
that kind of like there was no
right.
mystery. As soon as the people are there, you're like, well, I saw the symbol, and like it kind of. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I
what
guess
did you
what's
think of
weird
that?
about that is like, then why not just say it in the text right away? Like, what is even going on here? Like, why hold? This is like holding a reveal that then's not a reveal because you put it in the symbol. Am I supposed to feel clever because I saw a symbol and I knew who it was?
I mean, I think maybe. I mean, because it all says children of shadow, as opposed to
Right,
children of the light. So
right.
we're like, yeah, and they talk about them being weird. So yeah, I think yeah. I mean, I think there is that. I don't know. I think some fantasy readers. I know I like it when I'm figuring something out or I remember something. It is rewarding readers for doing particular things, like even noticing the symbol, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how much is that? I mean, it's got to be purposeful. I mean, they had to know that obviously they've used that symbol for the
Right,
children of the
right.
light. Clearly, we're going to see it and know it's the children of the
And
light.
that does it way more than the
Yeah,
title. I mean, obviously working in
yeah,
concert with the symbol. But if the title was just Children
sure,
of Shadow, I might not have been like, oh, they're gonna run into the Children of the
sure.
Light now. But I guess what struck me about this one is like this would have been maybe one of the times I would have been okay with. Like,
Mm,
oh, a reveal, it was the Children of the Light that were after you. Like it's something that I'm like, it's not a character just intentionally keeping something for me for reasons
sure,
that I don't
right.
understand that just feel like plot reasons. It actually
Mm,
feels like, oh, we wouldn't know, who these humans are until, of course, they're in sight and we can see their
mm,
clothes or whatever. But anyway,
yeah.
moving on because my big thing I want to talk about in this chapter
Mm.
is the wolves, particularly one particular wolf. But
I was waiting.
but before we get to that, so there's this whole other thing going on where Perrin feels bad
I was waiting for this one.
constantly about I would have killed if we were getting pecked to death by a billion
Right.
crows that I would have killed Egwene to put her out of her misery. This
Mm,
is another one where I'm not really feeling the inner conflict and it feels like a little manufactured. I mean, like, yeah, like we understand why you would
mm,
do that, Perrin. It doesn't mean you hate her. But also, I just
yeah.
found like this whole exchange odd. So he's like, he's ashamed of how proud he was of his axe. Okay. Elias is like, you hate her that much. He naturally is like, can you read my mind? Elias, maybe lying here, says, a man could read your face, boy. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're telling me just because of the way he was looking at his axe, you inferred that he was going to possibly kill Egwene with it. I I didn't get that. It makes way more sense that he could read his mind, just like the wolves can. So is he lying there? there? What's he on
Yeah,
about?
yeah, that is an interesting exchange because I did feel the same way of like the you know, just to back up to because there's like a two-pronged part here. The first is Perrin feeling guilty about being willing to kill, even thinking about killing a Egwene,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which, it, yeah, I feel like I needed just a little bit more to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if this. Obviously, we talked before about Robert Jordan's background and how he has, fought in combat and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I imagine this is something that he experienced, right,
Mm-hmm.
or that someone near him experienced. So I feel like he knew that emotion, right, that sensation and that guilt that could come afterward. But yeah, I didn't quite feel it conveyed to me
Mm-hmm.
either on the page. Like I think it's a fascinating concept
Yeah.
that isn't maybe dug into, that I don't read in too many stories. But yeah, it didn't quite land for me. So I would agree with that. I think it's a tricky thing when, you're trying to convey something that intimately maybe that other people don't.
And
And that's, again, our job as writers.
And I think this
But
is something that comes up in like criticism of writing a lot, where like
mm,
there's like some readers are like, if you just tell it to me, I accept it. Like you tell
mm,
me Perrin has this thought, and they're like, okay, Perrin had that thought. Whereas I'm like, I don't know, like I need something else where I am able to relate to it in some way, or I'm able to
connect to
understand
it.
it and connect to it in some
Mm,
way. And like this one I can't, because it seems like a perfectly reasonable thought. It seems like
mm,
you were having altruistic reasons for, if you
right,
had done
right,
that, it would be extreme circumstances. It makes perfect sense. Nobody's
right.
getting on you about it. Like
Mm.
it just feels manufactured to me, like, and I'm just supposed to accept it because it's just stated, but I can't do that.
Right. I think it's because you and I live a lot in logic too,
Mm-hmm.
that I would agree. Like, I think why it didn't land for me either is because it feels logical, right? Like, yeah, you're trying to save your friend from, um, you know, greater pain. I think what maybe would have worked more for me is if Egwene had figured it out and then she railed at him for taking her choice away or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being a stupid man to think he gets
Mm-hmm.
to pick or
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm. Which is a little
But
bit
yeah,
what Elias talks to him about here, but like it
yeah,
feels weird coming
he
from
just
Elias instead, or
yeah.
Elias is just kind
So
of showing him the stupidity of what he's thinking, but like I'm like, yeah, I think it's
right,
stupid too.
right, no, completely. So yeah, it was a bumpy part for me as well. I was like, why? He seems like he's really self-flagellating over
Mm-hmm.
this, in a way that he doesn't. It was a fleeting thought. Why is he getting on himself? And I'm like, I think it's because, again, maybe you would if you were really in that life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really thinking about it, like maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, but it wasn't conveyed enough for me to feel that as someone who hasn't experienced it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, no, I feel on that. So anyway, I just wanted to agree mostly about that part, and then talk about the difficulty of writing something experienced. But then two, with Elias, yeah, the phrasing "you hate her that much," that definitely gave me a little bit of pause, as well as like that, because what I think he's referring to is the way they were over the fire, because they start off and they're happy in this setting and they're making food, but then Perrin's acting weird, and
Mm-hmm.
then eventually it goes silent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they have this like quiet meal, until then Elias gives this whole like thing. So basically, he's referring back to when Egwene's laughter died with the way Perrin was acting toward him,
Mm.
but saying you hate her that much felt really strong. Um, and yeah, I just felt kind of slightly odd. So yeah, no, I'm with you. The wording he chose there seems strange.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, because this is all just like nonsense, right? You were ready to kill her because you
Yeah.
despise her. Elias obviously doesn't mean
He's
any of that. And what
strong.
he means is
Yeah.
like, what do you think she would pick? She would obviously pick what you were planning to
Yeah.
do, so you shouldn't feel
Right.
bad about having
Yeah.
planned to do that. Like, that all makes sense, but like, again, it's just like I have trouble, just like the character is pointing out, like why didn't this occur to you, character, or like why are you feeling this way? And especially when then another character like points it out, then I'm like doubly like, yeah, I don't understand Perrin. And I think that's the
Right.
problem, is I don't understand them. Like, I don't know where these thoughts are coming from.
Right.
They alienate me a little bit from
Hmm.
Perrin.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it just feels like something manufactured. I feel like Jordan feels like there has to be something, there has to be this conflict. I want to put this inner conflict into my characters, but if it's not grounded in something, it comes across like kind of flat and weird.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
And yeah, and like I said, I like the idea of it, but it did feel flat to me. It felt like an unnecessary scene. This was not the part yet where I fell in, and I'm going to be. I obviously we got the wolf part to talk about.
yeah.
But then we'll get to. But go ahead, please.
Okay, well, if you're ready to get to the wolves, I want to
Yeah.
get to the wolves. Let's just go right to wolf
Oh,
sacrifice.
oh, this was so sweet though.
What?
But did you, I don't know, the Will You Dance With Me on Sunday? I don't know that. I don't know if you marked that because you liked it or not, but I'm glad you did because that just like it just hit nicely for me. But please,
Yeah,
obviously, if you did it,
yeah.
just
I
do.
did this because, like, again, I'm like, what like character interaction am I supposed to care about? You took away Egg and Rand from me.
Right.
First you poisoned me on it completely, and then you took it away from me. So like, what is? And I'm kind of, I don't know how interested Jordan is in these romance subplots. I'm starting like I get these conflicting signals. Like even this like rival in the traveling people.
Right.
You
Sure, yeah.
imagine that's there for the eventual pair and egg pairing, right? This is the obstacle to their relationship. But like, I don't know what to think anymore about any of that. But yeah, I highlighted that because I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of getting me reinvested in Perrin and Egg. And I mean, I know she could just mean it as like a friends thing, which is kind of how he takes it. But
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
So-
I don't know what to think about. So why was that like rival dude there in that other
Oh,
chapter?
so right. So there's so many parts that we can be discussing about this. So yeah, I mean, for me, though we sort of had similar reactions to the Elias confronting Perrin about why he was feeling that way, there was a line that I really like where he says, Perrin says, "I love her," not like a sister,
Right.
but but Rand was friends with her, and I think what Jordan's trying to show there is that they have that special kind of relationship that I feel you can have with like a friend's girlfriend or a friend's wife kind of thing, right? Because like, I mean, you and I are of a relatively similar generation. I mean, we are the same generation. But I was going to say the similar generation to like what Jordan's writing. And obviously this book came out before even that. But I'm thinking of like when Harry met Sally, right? And like the huge speech about like guys and girls aren't friends, right? Like you're only together to get one thing, right? And I think that, there are exceptions. I mean, obviously we would argue for huge exceptions between that, but at least in terms of our generation, when that really was, or seemingly a thing, that guys and girls generally were not friends, at least not in my experience. One of the few exceptions that you did talk or hang out with a girl was because it was who someone else was dating or promised to or whatever, if we're talking this world, right? So I think what he's trying to show there is that Karen and Egwene have this sort of special friendship that is rare, and so that's what's happening. Like when this "Will You Dance With Me on Sunday" line, that to me was just a callback to, I really liked her line too of a steading, isn't it supposed to be safe? Is anywhere safe? And then her being like, "Will you dance with me?" Just kind of thinking back to happier times. And that's why I felt kind of like that moment. But I do like that line about she isn't like a sister, but she and Rand, he's saying it's that sort of relationship. So that really rang true for me because that was also my
Wait,
experience.
what is he saying here? Not like that.
Yeah.
So not like I
Because he
love
says,
her.
"I love her."
I
Right.
mean, she isn't like a sister. So the opposite
Right.
of I romantically love her would be
Right.
I love her like a
Right.
sister.
Right.
But then he says that isn't it.
Right.
But she and Rand, so then he's saying like actually I do love her, but I can't love her because she and Rand are already a thing.
I mean that could be an interpretation. Sure.
Yeah, and
Well, no,
ellipses,
but no, he
ellipses,
says,
ellipses. Like,
no,
what am I supposed
no,
to?
No, actually, I don't think that's it because he does say he doesn't love her like that. So yeah, it's
Well,
the one that I'm thinking of. I
I
think. I
love
mean, you could be
her. I
lying,
love her.
but not
Not like that. I mean,
so not romantically.
but then that would be, it is like a sister. Not,
Well,
it
but
isn't
there's
like a sister.
yeah. I mean, I guess to me there is. I mean, I don't have any sisters, so I can't say for sure. But to me, I did imagine as this sort of separate thing that Jordan's going for this again, like weird space where you're the girlfriend of a friend relationship.
Uh-huh.
Not so it's not fully like a sister,
So,
but it's not someone you're romantically involved
so
with.
explain the butt she and Rand.
Yeah, so he's saying it's I'm not in love with her. It's not like she's my sibling, but she and Rand were together, so she exists in this like separate space of she's a girl, but not someone I'm romantically involved in, and she's not a bloodkin, but we're like friends.
And the butt she and Rand, is this why she's relegated to the friend zone? Because she's
Yeah,
already with
right.
Rand. But like when you say like somebody's relegated to the friend zone because they're involved with another person, not because I'm not interested in them like that, but because they're involved with another person, that is implying you would be into them like that if they were
Um,
not involved with that other person.
I mean, I don't know. Again, like obviously I do think this is personal. It just it speaks so much to my experience. It
Mm.
just clicks that my brain does view someone like that in a different way. Like it's like my brain disassociates even the possibility of a romantic relationship. And that, and don't get me wrong, I realize there's tons of songs to the contrary. Like,
Jesse's
songs about like,
girl.
I'm in love with my friend's girl. Why can't I find a girl like that, right? I've always hated that song for that reason. Like, stop being lazy, go find somebody else. But so yeah, I mean, I don't know. That one just rang very true for me, and I knew exactly what he meant by that. So to
Oh,
me, yeah, she
interesting.
exists in this friend zone because of it's like an honor thing. Like at least there's a lot of that in this book. Well, I guess not so much
Right,
in
right. I
this
mean,
first book,
I get like it's
but
like
yeah,
an honor thing, like you wouldn't like stab your buddy in the back, but it to me sort of implies that like if they were not together,
they
then I
weren't
would
there.
be romantically
Mm,
interested.
I
Um,
hear that.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of what I
Well,
want. I want something. I thought that was gonna happen with these two. Now that we paired them off, and I
right.
wasn't poisoned on their relationship yet, and
You're
then you
right.
get this like almost like comedy movie rival in those
Mhm.
chapters. I was
The
like,
Tinker guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't know, but I mean, I don't want to get too derailed with this. I mean, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
like that line, but I kind of had highlighted it more to be like, oh, what's going on here with them, which is
Yeah.
something that I kind of want to have happen.
Sure. I mean, yeah, they definitely seem more like friends. It drifts a little bit, but yeah, I mean, this book so far definitely is not delivering heavier
No,
romance. Um,
but it's teasing it. Do you get what's weird
it
about
does.
that? Like it never
Yeah.
stops teasing it, and then not
Yeah.
following
Yeah.
through with it in a way that you would be satisfied with.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I do.
So
I also wonder
interesting.
if that is also about later books' popularity because there's lots of romance in later
Mm,
books.
mm, mm.
There are relationships and everything.
Damn, I
Um,
gotta read
I'm
these
not
later
saying
books.
but it's funny as we talk about the like, oh, I wish this thing happened. I wish this, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and
Mm.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, on to the wolf. On to the
All
wolf.
right,
Soaring like the eagles.
Hopper. Okay,
Hopper.
this.
Mhm.
What the heck? What
Yeah.
the heck? So,
Yeah.
you know how mad I was about let's give frickin' Tom a tragic
Oh my
backstory
goodness.
2 seconds
Right.
before he dies. I was like, soaring like an eagle. He always wanted to soar like an eagle. I was like, what? Are you serious? And I knew he was dead. I knew he was dead. Paragraphs
He's
before he
dead.
was
He's
dead.
dead.
Because you did that dumb thing again. And like this, I was like, first of all,
Right.
what is it? A wolf doesn't want to be an eagle. Get out of town. I don't. If I'm
I
a wolf, I don't want to
mean,
be an eagle. But get out of here with that. But then I was also like, wait. So we got our big block paragraph of
right.
things that I should know about Mr. Wolves. And
Right.
I went back and checked to be like, was one of the things about Hopper that he wanted to be an eagle and soar through the air? And it was not one of the things that I learned about Hopper. It was that he wanted to be an eagle and
Wow.
soar through the air. And I was like, this is A, out of nowhere. B, it's reaching for that tragedy. And another reason why I don't think it works is that reach for tragedy almost feels reflexive to me to do because you're worried it's not going to be tragic enough. Why are you worried it's not going to be tragic enough? Because Perrin hasn't interacted with these characters. Perrin doesn't have a relationship with these characters. None of us do because they're not in the story. They're off in the periphery, which was my big problem with this paragraph. My big problem with this paragraph is like, you can't just listen to the thing about Hopper. Hopper was scarred and grizzled fighter, impassive with the knowledge of years, with guile that more than made up for anything of which age might have robbed him. For humans he cared nothing. But Dapple wished this thing done, and Hopper would wait as she waited and ran as she ran. So first, like, this just tells me nothing about impassive with the knowledge of years, with guile that more than made up for anything which age might have robbed him. It's just like so blah. It's like I don't understand Hopper any better because of this sentence. And then also, he cared nothing about the humans, but he's gonna do whatever Dapple tells him to do. So did Dapple tell him to sacrifice himself for Perrin?
I was going to say, actually, it's got two parts that seem kind of contradictory. Because impassive doesn't seem to match this, like, hopping all around all the time.
Hopper, right, huh.
Right, to me. And then, for humans, he cared nothing. We can extrapolate that he viewed, Perrin as one of the pack, right? But as you've said, if we got more of the pack interacting with him, I mean, we did get the wolf in the dream, so that could have been an opportunity to have that wolf be Hopper, right?
Right.
That's watching him, I definitely think there was an opportunity. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't know why, but I love that paragraph about him soaring and the eagles and everything. But I completely, I feel like we were just talking about this with like movies, that there are things we're going to look at and be like, this is not as good as it could be. And I'm like, you're right. I can't disagree. Like, yeah, I mean, why not have like a previous wolf be Hopper, or why say impassive if he's got the energy of a cub and he's hopping all around? Like, grizzled fighter doesn't seem the same as this now.
Right.
That description back to back really feels like two different wolves to me. This one feels like a wolf that kind of never grew up. His dreams of wanting to be an eagle, which I can get. I think some wolves might want to be something else, but I do think, like, why not learn this the first time we learn about Hopper, and why not see some of that in the wolf dream or something?
I just wanted to, and the thing about this sacrifice is, like, as soon as it's happening, I'm like, everything I've read, like, you're like, oh, he's one of the pack now. Well, that would be wonderful if I felt like Perrin was one of the pack now. I do not feel that way. I feel like,
especially because he doesn't want to be.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be. The one, I can't remember which one, straight up hates him.
Blaze, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember. Dapple is kind of like, well, look, I'm the leader here, and y'all are kind of, dealing with this guy because, I say so, and I'm going to ignore your thoughts to the contrary. I also learned that Hopper hates humans, which wasn't the one that was, like, really, like, I hate you and I don't want you here.
Right, different person.
I don't feel like he's part of these wolves. I don't feel a relationship at all with these wolves. So then when one sacrifices itself, at least with Tom, I got a tacked on explanation for why he, like, sacrifices himself. And even in that, like, he spent enough time with them that there's, like, a personal relationship, that I could be like, okay, I'm going to, like, help out my fellow travelers here. With these wolves, I was like, I have no idea why Hopper is doing this. I do not... Did Elias tell him specifically, you have to save this kid? Even then, like, Elias's motivation of helping them out, God, he had a reason, and I can't remember it, to be perfectly honest. So, like, when when like this happens, I was like, why would Hopper do this? I super don't feel it. And then I go back to that block paragraph and I was like, why were we not spending all this time with these wolves instead of with these traveling people who I super don't care about and who are gone? And if you had set up this, then you don't have to reach for this faux tragedy like he's never going to get to be the eagle that he wanted to be. You know, like everything about this felt false to me. Where it was like just here to go, oh, I haven't done the work of making you understand why this is tragic to these characters or why these characters have a relationship. So I'm going to inject this little tragic bit. And it just, A, it telegraphs everything, which I hate. And B, like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make it feel any more tragic to me. Now, if they had a relationship, if they had gotten to interact, then this could be really tragic.
Yeah, I mean, it really could have been. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that well, not a lot of that, but some of that. I mean, we know why Moraine and Lan are doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of know what Tom, and we end up finding out why Tom is doing what he's doing, right? But basically, you've got these youngins, these whelps, that are just out in the world, right? They can't survive on their own, so there's got to be people who help them, at least initially. Why did the people help them, right? And so we are searching for those other character motivations, right? In this, it could be as simple as, Elias is helping them because Perrin can talk to the wolves and almost no one else can, something like that. But that also could feel like a Deus Ex Machina, right? So, because it's just suddenly he can, right? It's not like we learned previously he had any hints of this throughout his life. So I do feel like there are weaker elements to the story. There are sort of things happening kind of for plot reasons. And yeah, I wonder, a lot of people do talk about how this book is kind of obviously very influenced by the first, the journey aspect of Lord of the Rings, right? Same as like Sword of Shannara's first book. That's sort of same thing too. And so it does feel like it's looking to hit these beats, and then it's harder to justify the beats. But anyway, I'm going very large here, very macro, but you're definitely right from micro level for this piece. We had so much time. This could have definitely been set up more. This almost feels more like a stylistic choice, right? Like, because there was the time, it could have happened. So why not, right? Like, was it really thought it's better to just get a burst of it now? Like, oh, we're finally seeing a little bit more about the dreams of somebody. But like, again, it's Perrin becomes one with the wolf in that moment. So he's learning something he didn't get to learn before, right? And so that could be a justification. But then in the next part, we don't have Perrin reflecting on how this communication he was getting with learning of the wolf was different than others, right? Because he clearly knew stuff about him before, but how, right? So yeah, no, I think there is some ambiguity there with the magic system of the wolves. Overall, I'm a huge fan of the way the wolves communicate and everything. But I do agree if we're saying, we only learn this now because that's the way it works, but then that's not set up. And why would you need to do that anyway?
Yeah, and like to the point where Hopper, who hates humans, says brother. I just, man.
Well, impassive. Well, no, he is impassive. He cared nothing for them, so.
Cared nothing for
them. But, I mean, I think this could, again, be the justification that he is viewed.
Yeah, I mean, but I would like to, do you see what I'm saying? I'd like to feel that he's a brother now. If I felt like he was brother of the wolves, this would hurt me. Right here, like, why? What? Why?
Well, this does tie back to what you said before, though, about you'd rather Tom had just helped and not get an explanation, right? And so here we are. I mean, sure, we're getting the fly like an eagle thing, right? But, like, if he had just killed it, if he had just, with no eagle, just leaped in, killed the guy, and then turned to Perrin and said, run, bro. Like, then that would tell us that the wolves do view him as a brother, even if he doesn't view them that way. Right?
No, you're misunderstanding what I felt about Tom. With Tom, it wasn't that I didn't want an explanation. I didn't want an explanation handed to me on a platter right before he died. I wanted the explanation to be inherent. I wanted to know why he would do this because of what I had read up to that point. I didn't want at the last moment to be like, here's the explanation. Does that make sense?
No, it does. You're wanting them to show something through action that we already know from previous action.
Yeah.
Then maybe hasn't been explicitly stated, but I mean, I feel like the wolves have shown that because they are guarding him in the sleep. They are staying around to help. Now we could say they're staying just because of Elias,
Yeah, that was
right?
my impression. Like, my impression has been nothing but kind of antagonism towards Perrin, that he's new, that they don't trust him, that, like, even though he has the wolf powers, I didn't feel like he was accepted. You know? And they seem kind of harassing. The one to show up in his dream, I guess that's the one thing that, like, oh, wolves are protecting me. Now they're in my dream.
Yeah.
But, like, that's so weird dream logic anyway. I mean, things just pop up in dreams because you're freaking thinking about them. It didn't really say to me that, like, oh, they now like him. And then, like, when they're going off and, you know, scouting for the crows, that all just seems like because they do care about Elias. I understand why Hopper would do this for Elias.
Right. I guess it just seems tricky, right? Because we've also talked about, you know, point the reader one direct. I mean, because I was going to say the fact that Perrin hasn't accepted them exacerbates the issue, right? Like the fact that he doesn't want to be part of the pack, but then the wolves do. So we're being led away from him and the pack. Like it's kind of being forced on him, right? But then also that could create the surprise of, oh, I didn't expect the wolf to save him because I didn't think they were that close. Oh, wow, they do view him as a brother.
But
right?
then I don't believe it, though.
But it just feels, this is what I mean about writing being sticky,
Yeah.
right? That like, if we are going to point the reader in an alternate direction, for instance, to then achieve an effect, which is something else we've talked about, right? That seems tricky to do in a situation like this, because then someone's dying and we normally want to feel, you know, the weight of that death, right? So I agree that the clear path, right, like the sort of standard, the more standard path would have been, let's have some previous scenes where there's some interaction between Perrin and the Wolves.
It's not
maybe
just the standard. You say
first.
standard is such a dismissive way. It's the better way to do it. It's gotta be better.
No, I didn't mean like compare to this. I meant compare to like the redirect, which would be more complex. I just meant the standard way to foreshadow something is show it before it's going to happen, right? Like, so if we're going to show that they're brothers, because this is a solution to a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, Perrin has got a weapon in his face. The solution is Wolf saves him. Why does Wolf save him? If that's not set up, it feels like another Deus Machina, right? Like, just again and again. It's solutions. It's solutions without setups over and over, right? So that's what I meant about like the standard way. Like the normal way is to set it up, right? But I was saying if we were trying the other thing, I was just trying to think of like, if we were going this route of Perrin doesn't want to be involved with the Wolves. The Wolves are a proud people and wouldn't just tell him, just imagine, right? Like you wouldn't just say, oh, you're part of Pack now. And they're not going to rub up against him like a kitten or something. Like what's the way to show that they do view him as Pack? I think there's other moments that are undermining this run brother moment. Like if it's like because we got that previous description of Hopper, which does seem so at odds with this description, because we then do get this last sort of hurrah from him, which I totally understand can devalue this moment. I feel like we're losing the impact of just seeing someone's feeling, seeing the wolf save him tells us why. And since it's not, if it was at the end of the book, obviously no, right? You got to set up the solution at the end of the book. But if it's kind of like a middle one, I feel like you could just be showing it through action. But I feel like those other parts that we've talked about color this run brother. I feel like that could have maybe worked as the moment of like, oh crap, like they do view him as a brother and he's been like dissing them this whole time. And that could have been a hit, but it's colored by this other stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's hard for me to see how that works as a reveal that turns around my expectations of what the wolves are feeling. I think you gotta you got to give some other clues, you know? Like, I feel like there has to be something else here. And I want it to be, I guess my instinct is I want it to be in the relationship between the characters. So I want these characters to have had scenes together. I want them to have, so that you don't have to tell me. I think it's like, don't tell me, but make it clear. And there's something very satisfying about that. You didn't spell it out, but it's there. I got to feel it. I got to experience it with the characters. And then you don't have to say it, and that just feels so successful when you pull that off, you know?
No, I completely agree. And even the story like an eagle, like I said, like this part works for me, even though I know it shouldn't. This one I feel like I do remember working for me. I'm probably remembering my reread that happened like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. But I remember feeling it. I don't know why. I think it's because, someone who has a dream and then cut off in the moment. But the fascinating thing is that dream doesn't have anything to do with his like of Perrin, or why he would say Perrin, So again, it's still not showing that. It's showing something kind of different that makes it sad. It's not sad because he saved her, and sad because just a life was cut off before it got to accomplish what it wanted to, sort of thing.
It made me mad, Jeff. This is maybe
I'm sure
this
did.
is maybe the thing that has made me the most mad of anything in the movie. It might be.
I'm sure, especially after our Tom conversation. I mean, come on, Tom's was like what was it, maybe 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before? This was like seconds before, right? So, yeah.
All right. Well, so then actually what is kind of funny here is then we get the Children of the Light captured him. And this is kind of the first villain that I've kind of liked, the Lord Captain. I'm like, okay, I dig this guy. This guy seems reasonable. He has like a consistent point of view. He doesn't seem one note to me. He's got complexity a little bit. I do feel like I had one quibble with him at the end where he's like, oh, I'm not going to kill you kids because maybe, you can be redeemed. Except for you. Except for you, Wolf Boy. You're going to die. But then I'm like, why doesn't he then just kill Wolf Boy and not kill Egwene? Like his whole justification for why I'm not killing you was then completely contradicted for
I feel like they wanted that line so bad. You know what I mean? So, but just to back up, so I would agree. This was the part I completely fell in.
I like this part.
I flew through these pages because Bornhold is amazing to me because so often I feel like we just get the villain who's bad for bad reasons or whatever. And this guy seems like he's got a code. He's got a very specific code that is based in rationality, right? He's got good arguments. And what I love seeing the contrast. I love that it's not just Bornhold talking this, but we get to see a more zealous version of that same belief system. And so Bornhold seems incredibly reasonable because of the extreme that this other buyer represents, right?
Though I will also say,
so cool.
I will also say this seemed like a straight up lie that the guy does, like a face-saving lie. Between these two, there were at least a dozen other men. We believed we disposed of 4 or 5, but it is unlikely we will find any bodies. Like that especially was like, dude, you're just BSing straight to him. And then like Bornhold is like, oh, you naive idiot, there always seems to be more wolves than there actually are. If you had been outside of a city, you would know that. Like he's like, but I think to me this just read as a complete face-saving lie. And Bornhold doesn't really call him out on that. He kind of accepts that this guy believes his own BS, which I wasn't like 100%. Just something especially that it's unlikely we'll find any bodies just seems like a very like face-saving lie to me.
Well, they're dark friends propensity of caring. Well, again, I think we're looking at a little unreliable narrator there.
Exactly.
Like, their beliefs are a little skewed, and so, I mean, I think the way Bayer is presented, he does seem very straightforward, but I'd have to go back and see, like, do we get more of that kind of after that speech? So we're more, this guy just believes his own BS sort of thing.
I mean, maybe
speech was in the process.
Maybe he does. That just took me out so much that like it just like how contrary it is to reality. Like, could he really believe that's what he thought was happening? Yeah, maybe, man. But it just seemed like wildly out of touch that it struck me as like he's lying straight to his boss's face.
Right. Well, the dozen. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're high numbers, but they weren't supposed to be in the dark, and Elias seems competent, right?
Like,
But
who
yeah,
is he
I
even
hear
talking
you.
about when he killed 4 or 5 men? Like, could he really believe that's what they did?
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't kill anybody else,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they must have fought with someone and thought they gave them like wounds that would kill somebody. Yeah, it does seem a bit of a stretch. Yeah, no, yeah. I
It's
mean, definitely
interesting.
the other clues.
I think it
The
could be
clues
read.
do tell us it's BS.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it could be read both ways that this guy really does believe this and he's just naive and dumb
Hmm.
and Borhold sees through that. But, like, I kind of read it
Right.
as, like, this guy's scared he's going to get in big trouble, so he's just making up this big story. I think also you've seen that in I've probably seen that in other movies
Sure.
lots where, like,
Oh,
the big bad
completely.
villain, you,
Yeah.
like, lie to him because he's going to kill you if you don't, say that you did
Right.
something good. So maybe I was
Right.
just primed for that, but, like,
Mhm.
I really did feel like he was lying in that, like, the Bornhole guy, again, like, I like him because he seems competent, he seems on top of stuff, he seems like he knows what's up, and I was waiting for him to, like, kind of call that out a bit more than he did.
Yeah, I hear you that that's thing because we're seeing such competition from Bornhall. If he's overlooking that, then we're like, oh, but there could be this other reason. I guess, yeah, maybe it was just a bit too extreme if they had said that we thought there was maybe half a dozen others, but we injured some, but we think maybe grievously, right? Like something like that. It did seem a bit extreme that there were a dozen other, we killed 4 or 5. But again, that maybe is just meant to show as an experience. I hear you. I definitely paused slightly on that. I'm like, those are some high numbers, bro. But again, I do know the character, Meyer's character, so like I
Okay.
know he's very straightforward.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
so
Well,
it's
because
tough for me to do it
here's
here.
another
Yeah.
thing that's weird about Bayer. So cutting out their tongues would
Mhm.
give him no pleasure and no regret.
Mhm.
It was just something he would do. All right.
Right.
Bayer's eyes met his eyes and smiled. The smile
Right.
touched only his mouth, but the skin of his face grew tighter till it looked like a skull. That doesn't seem like somebody who's like just like, well, I'll kill you. I don't care. No pleasure or regret. I'll be very cold and calculating about that. But then why would that guy like smile creepily? That indicates pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure.
It seemed
That is
contradictory to me.
odd.
It didn't seem like the same characterization.
Yeah, I mean, Perrin could be wrong, right? That in the moment, the way Bayer's acting, it seems like he's just very mechanical.
Right.
But then we don't have Perrin realize he's wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If he was wrong, if he sees the smile and then he's like, oh,
Oh crap, he
right.
will take pleasure, right?
Exactly. Then I would have been like okay with that. But it just felt
Yeah, we just get more of a visual as opposed to Perrin's reaction to that
it's
smile. But
interesting
yeah,
to hear
no, for
that
sure.
Bayer's really straightforward later on because I feel like he's shaky here, whereas Bornhold is I feel very realized.
Yeah, I meant mainly in this. I do just the way it's described, where he's very zealous, right? It's like he's going to do like the extreme version of the belief system, basically,
Right.
like
Right.
methodically, right? And I really like the idea that he just he carries it out because that's what he believes in. It's not for pleasure,
Yeah,
it's not for
yeah.
regret. So yeah, but it is strange why then he does smile in that part. That does seem completely contradictory. So yeah, but because I would say otherwise he acts very straight. But I get your point. If you think maybe he's lying in that one part, and then he seems cold, but then smiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like maybe because I mean obviously I don't want to reveal too much. Like he appears again, and so yeah, maybe his character just wasn't quite hammered out in that one line. I think that smile does throw it. It does. I think he wanted that type like a skull.
Yeah,
I
like
just,
the,
when I say like I want it, I just know those feelings.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, as a writer, it's like, oh, I want to write this. Oh, that would work.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it actually doesn't
Yeah.
maybe jive with what you had previously.
I accept that. I could see that being a thing where like, how do I get the skin tighter? A smile would do it and sell this like skull look of him. Yeah.
And then Perrin shivers. So we do get his reaction. We don't get a reaction of, oh crap, he does take joy in this. That's going to be even worse for me, kind of thing. So yeah. But yeah. So anyway, cool that it's interesting that we go through all these parts of like, oh, this, that. I mean, we haven't had many disagreements of what we've talked through. It's more just been kind of personal choice, but I see obviously your points. But for this one now, we both just kind of fell in with Bornhold because Bornhold is such a fucking fascinating character. I'm sorry, didn't mean to lie. I mean, I swear, I know. Everything, it's all over now. But I do. I really like Bornhold in this chapter. It feels like, oh yeah, let's get more Perrin chapters, right? Like, what's up with this guy? So yeah.
Yeah, I like this too. He seems like the first like pretty worthy villain that we've gotten. So I am interested to see more with him.
I think what he's also looking for to that line at the end, right, is I feel that we've seen that in other things where it's like repent and then we'll kill you, right? It's like we're going to kill you either way, but your soul will be lighter if you repent first. I think that's the feel they're going for with that.
Yeah, but is that this guy? I guess like one of the things I like about this guy is he feels like obviously. He feels like the best argument for this worldview, whereas like the other arguments for them feel cartoony, right? Like the Children of the Light have felt pretty cartoony up to this point. They're like, the Spanish Inquisition guys. Right. Yeah, they're going to, make you repent, but not really, because they're just going to kill your ass anyway. Like you get it. You get the villainy of it. Whereas this is the first guy that's made me feel like, oh, I could accept that somebody would actually believe this, or that, somebody would follow this code. This has been the first guy in the Children of Light that has made me buy that, other than just being like one-note villain.
Yeah, they've totally been that before. They've been the kind of, just villains.
So that's why, that's why this little bit at the end, I think it's more like he wants a hit. Jordan wants a hit at the end of the chapter, wants like a line. But like if he felt that way about Perrin, that Perrin is beyond like any way of repenting and saving, then that just kind of contradicts, because like Bayer just straight up says we should kill them right now and lays out in very Moraine-like logic why we should do it, because we have to get to this place by this certain time. All of our horses have run off. We don't have time to like drag along 2 kids. Great argument, right?
It was on it. Bayer's super logical.
And then Bornhold's like, here's why not, because they might repent, renounce the Dark One, come to the light. Oh, except you. You're not going to do that. You're dead.
Well, I think the line for that is, tell us what you know of this vileness with the wolves. I think he's giving time because he wants that information. But yeah, I mean, does that cost benefit the difficulty of getting them to this place that they really need to get to?
Yeah.
Would it be easier just to kill him and get that information from Egwene? Right. I know, I hear that. I mean, yeah.
I like that he sighs sadly about it, but still, if he's like already made up his mind about this, I just don't 100% get it. Of course, we can't kill Perrin right now because that would make the plot grind to a halt. But it just
no, we just jump POVs, bro. It's all good. We just Game of Thrones this thing.
And Perrin slap hands, and you just trade it off. Tag in.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think there is justification there. I feel you that it does seem like it's more for the line, and this is something that could be revealed later. But I'd prefer it revealed now as opposed to later, like we brought you all this way just to kill you. I mean, maybe, I don't know, part of it would be like, well, don't tell him because then he say something. But I like the idea more of like, you should really tell us yourself, we're going to kill you in 2 days, but like, you should still tell us. It feels more honorable for him to do that as opposed to like, you should tell us, oh, you told us thanks, now we're killing you. So I get your point, but I also like that Bornhold says it because it feels more in keeping with that particular part of his character. But anyway, we'll see. The one thing, I actually had one thing about these chapters. I don't know why the wolves attack the children.
Oh.
That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why the wolves were doing anything that they were doing.
Yeah, I don't, because it seems like that then inspires the children to look around, right? Whereas otherwise they would have just maybe gone to the watering hole and stayed there, right? So the wolves attacking seemed antagonistic and more likely to stir up trouble than let them just pass in peace.
Well, I guess there's like a mystery there that you should know. So I don't know if you're setting me up for this, but there was a line where they smelled funny or something.
Right.
And
exactly. And they are children of shadow, right?
So
yeah. So it.
Wait, do you know very well why they did this, and you're just kind of setting me up for this mystery, or is that what's happening here?
Well, we're creating our own reveals here, Steve. I can't do that. I can't do that right now.
Oh no!
But I will certainly agree with you that I was talking about they don't smell right, and we're even reminded that wolves hate Trollocs and basically things associated with them. So right. But to me, that was kind of the part that I'm wondering during it, like why attack? Just let them be, and then Barrett and Egwene could probably get away without being caught. But obviously, I'm very glad they're caught because Bornhold and Bayer are super fun.
All right, sounds good, everybody. So we'll have 2 more chapters for y'all next week. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, we'll see you for Rand next time.